Welcome to the FAST Podcast, your go-to source for financial advisor strategy talks. Hosted by myself, Candace Byrnes, the lead creative designer on the marketing team at White Glove. And with me, I have Dean Thurman, co-founder of both White Glove and InvestWise Financial. Join us as we dive into valuable insights from industry experts, providing actionable tips to accelerate your success. Hello, thank you for joining us on today's episode of the FAST Podcast. We are super excited to start a new chapter of the podcast with you guys. So without further ado, we're excited to introduce ourselves. I'm Candace Byrnes, and with me I have Dean Thurman.
Hey, Candace, how are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to do this with you.
I'm super excited too. I've always wanted to do a podcast. Been around forever in this industry, and I know I can really help a lot of advisors on their practice management, some other things. I've been there and done that. But, just through all my years and all my coaching and everything else, hearing from so many other advisors out there and all their struggles and hearing their solutions, I've never had an outlet where I could share some of the other folks' stories. And so I'm really excited to do this with you, Candace.
Yeah, me too. That's definitely one thing I think that is huge that you bring to the table now as we kind of make this switch or kind of a shift for our audience for the FAST Podcast is you bring a lot of knowledge from not only the advisor side, but also, marketing and everything that you've done along the way, starting your business. So before we get into all of that, I will introduce myself a little bit. So I'm the lead creative designer here at White Glove. I love it. I love what I do. And it's really cool because what brought Dean and I into these chairs today is that we spend a lot of time going back and forth in the office. I make a lot of our content. I ask a lot of questions. I'm constantly learning. I didn't have a finance background before. So it's really cool to have somebody that I can go to and, just bounce questions off of. If you follow us on Instagram or Facebook, you've seen that we've started doing the advisor insights. So that's basically just me going and asking Dean questions, and that's stuff that happens behind the scenes that we started throwing out there, and then that led to the podcast, just to deep dive into those, coffee table conversations and turn it into something that can be valuable and educational for other people in the industry.
Yeah. And, why us? Why are we here? And what is our goal of the FAST podcast? The goal is to provide, somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes of very valuable, maybe sometimes entertaining content, all around practice management. Nothing to do, not directly anyway, with seminars or what White Glove does. We're not here to sell anybody anything. It's really to talk about practice management, increasing ROI, how to manage sub-advisors if you want to go that way, how to grow your individual or solo practice. We can talk about ensembles. We can talk about different broker dealers, FMOs, what all that looks like. Maybe what are some advisors, myself and other ones I work with, speaking with our clients about this week or this month. What are the hot topics? But mostly it's about how to run your practice as efficiently as possible so that you don't make the same mistakes that I've made over the last 33, 34 years of being a financial advisor and starting a very successful and growing financial planning practice.
Yeah, I think one thing I'm really excited to see is not only learning the steps that you took, and like you said, like the things that didn't work, try to avoid people from making those same mistakes, but also just what are things that right now are going on right now? What are you tackling with your people, like your clients? Because I feel that the day-to-day for you or for any financial advisor, it's never the same. The world is constantly changing, especially in the financial realm. Even with politics and all sorts of world events and stuff, it's never ending. Like, you're constantly given a new challenge. So I think it'll be really cool, not only for myself, but for now our listeners to hear what they can do better with their clients based off of your background and your knowledge and how you would approach the situation.
Sure. Right now, I guess I'll answer your question quite literally. There are three big things going on in our office right now. The name of our firm is InvestWise Financial in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. The biggest thing that's kind of on on our minds is we made a big change of a broker dealer from one broker dealer to another in the last 6 months, and it has been just a massive undertaking, not just with with our staff, but all of our clients and the new broker dealer and learning all those new systems. So we have a lot of struggles with that right now, and I think most advisors at one time or another kind of changed up their practice, went to a different broker dealer or RIA, different platforms, different FMOs. So we're dealing with that right now. Also, it's tax time, right? We happen to be recording this just after tax day, and tax, one of the biggest values that we can provide all of our clients is how to proactively strategize on their taxes. And the key word there is proactive, right? Anybody can react to, hey, I pulled money out for this or that out of this kind of account, and you react to it the next year when you're doing your taxes, but how to be proactive.
Right. It's a little bit too late if you worry about it on April 15th.
Yeah. So those two things. And then of course, we have, an election year. So some of our clients are asking about the election year right now, and are we managing money differently? So those are some of the things that are on top of mind for us.
I mean, those three things could be their own whole deep dive conversation. I will say one thing I definitely want to focus on and really get into today is a lot of people, not necessarily everyone listening, but have heard a bit of the history of White Glove. So I actually would like to go into more of the history of Dean,
Sure.
without making it sound too spearheaded or whatever you want to call it. But I would love to get to know more about young financial advisor Dean. Where was your mindset for what you wanted your future to be? And maybe that was very broad, or maybe it was very pinpointed to, you knew where you wanted to be in 50 years from that point or what. But I would love to hear kind of that journey and what all the puzzle pieces were that put together that now you're sitting here as a co-owner of both your own practice and then also your own seminar marketing company. So, and many more hats, so I would love to just kind of start from the beginning of what was your initial thoughts when you
how did it all get started?
Yeah.
How did it all begin? I'll keep it short. I have been in the industry now 34 years. My admin, Andrea, she's been with me now for, I think it's 28 years, almost 29.
Goodness.
But started off just like many people listening to this podcast right now, with no plan, no clue, not knowing what to expect. I knew it was a great lifestyle. I knew you can make a lot of money as a financial advisor. You can help a lot of people. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to be a stockbroker. That's what I was thinking, And in fact, I was at college, Central Michigan University, finance, and stockbroker came in, and he's was a little frazzled and all this, and he was talking about how much money he makes and how he's helping these people. It was just very intriguing. Well, there was nothing, what I thought I was getting into and what I got into, two totally different things. Love helping people, but started out driving around, my 1984 blue Chevy Cavalier without a muffler, driving to people's houses, cold calling, with a big flashlight, because it gets dark at 5:30 in the evening in Michigan, and getting on somebody's porch and knocking on their door, and then watching the TV go off or the porch light go off, and move on. So
nobody wanted to hear from you back then.
But started, working for somebody else initially, then spun out into our own firm eventually. And
now, was that InvestWise?
No,
okay.
That's we're just on year 3 of 34.
Okay.
InvestWise happened around 20 years ago. But more importantly, I do want the audience to know that not only did I not have a plan, not have, my dad wasn't in the business, nor did I have.
Yeah, I feel like that's a huge
or,
thing. I feel like a lot of people, it's more okay, like my dad or my grandpa, everybody
didn't buy a practice, had to build it from scratch, cold calling. That's what I did. But everybody listening to this podcast has a story and a struggle. This industry, this career is an absolute grind for the first 10 years. It just is. And I'm no different than anybody else. It was a grind. And at one point I had to decide, am I going to be a solo practitioner? Am I going to partner with somebody? Are
Right.
we going to hire folks? So I kind of went through that journey. And then eventually we decided, our marketing was going so good through seminars, different seminar company than White Glove, because White Glove didn't exist back then. Successful Money Management is the one that I started with. And got so many leads, we had to expand our practice, and kind of just kept growing from there. And
Okay,
the rest
great.
is history.
I mean, you raise a good question though. When you kind of came to that fork in the road of these three options, partner with somebody, start your own thing. What are some differentiators, would you say, for somebody who's in that position right now of like, I'm kind of there where I don't know which path I want to take, like without, going too deep, or I feel like you could probably talk for an hour on that, but what are some things that like really stood out to you that made that decision?
Well, you have to do the math, right? You only have so much time, and you want to think, who do you want to be? Do you want to be a big business owner and have sub advisors and receive overrides and, kind of be the provider of rent and support and payroll for a lot of these folks? Or you just want to be your own individual entity with all the freedom and flexibility and low stress that comes along with that. And, I chose the former. And there is one path versus the other is not better. It's not the one you should do. It's not the one I would, or anybody should talk you into. It's
Sounds
just
like
really
you
what's
have
in
to
your
have
heart.
like a very entrepreneurial mindset to take that business owner step.
Absolutely. That's a very heavy entrepreneurial risk-taking mindset. But even being a solo practitioner, there's a lot of risks with that, and there's a lot of lack of guidelines and guidance. I mean, it's there, and whoever you kind of partner up with will say that we're going to help you with that. But at the end of the day, everything falls on your shoulders, because our industry is driven by commissions and revenue. There's not a mothership that just sends you money, on salary. Not for a lot of us anyway.
So I've got to ask, because I'm curious, when you were in that kind of like maybe the first 10 years, is that kind of where we're at still, would you say? Did you feel like there was a really high importance in networking and being friendly and kind of having connections with other advisors? Or was it more so a kind of like dog eats dog world? What is the overarching, like, is there a major network in the financial industry, or is it more competitive?
So if we're going back 23 years,
Yeah.
so my first 10 years in it, that was, believe it or not, like before the internet and smartphones and all that kind of stuff, Candace. And we just go to conferences. And back then they could fly you wherever, France, it's in Hawaii, whatever. That was back in the day. And that's really where you did all your networking, and you tried to hear what other people are doing that is successful for them, and how are they helping their clients and growing their practice, or how are they being the most efficient solo practitioner that they can be. So really there wasn't as much networking then. It was a fraction of what there is now.
Right.
Now we have these podcasts, we have social media, we have a lot
There's
of
so much
different
resources.
Yeah, it's coming at you from everywhere, newsletters, and it almost makes it more difficult, because you have so many different choices. Which one do I pick?
Yeah. My question came, I actually just got a phone call from somebody that I went to college with, who is now a brand new financial advisor. And he had asked me like, hey, what should I do? Like, what do I do to get to the next step? And I was like, pretty flattered that I was being asked this question, to be honest. But I was like, just from what I've experienced through, last year I got to experience Host You, which is our event that helps advisors become better at seminar marketing, but also gives advisors like a really great opportunity to hear from other advisors and learn from what they're doing, kind of like what you just said. But that was the best thing I could come up with to tell him. I was like, it sounds like you need to just talk to people who are a little bit ahead of you. And as long as you just keep taking something from people who have like kind of already surpassed whatever step you're at, then you can build yourself and
That was great
get to the
advice.
next.
He called the right person. You don't give yourself enough credit. That was spot on. I wouldn't be anywhere without some mentorship. I love mentoring the younger advisors now that I'm in my mid 50s, and there's so many people just getting started and don't know where to go. Just like back in the day for myself. You asked earlier about, do you just go out there and kind of try and network or, build your practice
Yeah.
that way and be friendly to people and all that. That is a really great way to grow your practice, but that was not my way because I don't know if it was, back in the day, there was no such thing as social anxiety or anything, but I
But you
definitely
had
had
it.
it. Oh yeah. I graduated high school, 5'1", 110 pounds. I mean, that's no joke. I couldn't give blood my senior year when they did the blood drive. I got an I tried sticker because I didn't weigh enough.
They give you an
So
I tried
I
sticker.
tried,
I feel
right?
like it's almost worse.
Yeah, it's probably walking around with that. And so when I first got out into the business, nobody really took me serious because I did look like
Okay.
the paper boy in a suit, even though I was in my 20s, So it wasn't easy for me to be friendly and network. I had
I
to
feel like
find other
that's
paths.
got to be a pretty regular thing for anybody who's younger starting out because
Big
they're
time.
like, well, what makes me want to choose you as opposed to someone who it's the whole experience thing. How are you supposed to gain experience when you need experience? So
Yeah.
that's really interesting and a bummer in a way, but it's cool to hear how you navigate it.
I have to tell you something that's absolutely shocking and humbling and a little depressing for me is the younger advisors at our office are actually getting higher closing and call to action ratios than the senior folks that are in their 50s when they go do a seminar or any kind of network marketing. People really seem drawn to the folks in their 20s and 30s. And I think that's because they know that my runway might be 10, 15 years at the most, that I can help them manage their money. Whereas somebody in their 20s and 30s will probably
Right.
outlive the client and therefore be able to help, the journey up the mountain of saving and down, then the spend down the other side of the mountain in retirement, and eventually whatever's left over, hand that to the next generation. They look at me and maybe I'm not that guy. People with millions of dollars in complicated scenarios, they'll usually go with somebody that's more experienced. But
Mm-hmm.
the average upper middle class person that's looking for an advisor, I think a lot of them are really intrigued by people in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that goes with something that you and I talk about all the time is that being a financial advisor, you're almost also somebody's like therapist or, who
Sure.
you're running the one of the biggest parts of somebody's life, their
Yeah.
money, their finances. So unless you like somebody's personality, you're not going to go with them. So I guess it
Very
just
true.
depends on whoever's in that audience. If you have people who can better connect with someone younger, or if maybe they have this opinion about, oh, they're younger, so they're more tech savvy, or, or they're older and I trust them more because they've been around the block, or seen different times in the world and seen money move and things like that. So there is really like no, it's kind of cool. It's an industry where you don't get shoved out either way, but you just have to find your clientele.
You do. And, you brought up another, as we're talking about my practice as it evolved. About 6 years ago, I decided to turn my own practice into being serviced by a team. So it's myself at the head of the team, and then Scott, who's in his mid 40s, and then Mason, who's in his late 20s. So every one of our clients gets to meet with all three of us at some point. And that's our succession plan that makes the clients feel very comfortable, but they can also, I guess, some people would rather connect with somebody in their 20s, or a older client of ours that has adult children might feel more comfortable referring their adult children to Mason, who's 20,
Right.
27, 28, versus, 56-year-old guy.
That's really
So
interesting. Is that something that you'd say is common across a lot of like financial practices where they have you meet with a couple different advisors to see who you fit with?
yeah, some places have a what they call a right fit call,
Okay.
see who they could mesh with, and maybe this is a good time to just kind of explain my practice a little bit and how it's set up, because between this episode and the next episode, please reach out to Candace on social media there on our White Glove Facebook page or Instagram. Feel free to put it or email Candace and any of your questions for upcoming episodes.
Absolutely.
And I know that I'll answer every single one of those questions as best as I can. Our practice is set up a certain way, but it's evolved over time, and it's not necessarily the best way for you. But for us, it's myself at the head, and then we have 4 other senior advisors, if you will, that kind of I've worked with for decades, and then 5 or 6 junior advisors. Some of them aren't even fully registered yet. They're providing a service role, and then about 10 support staff that does the paperwork, or the receptionist and the communications director and all that. So that's a pretty big office, and that's not real common. They call that an ensemble. But I've been through every stage, from a solo to a partnership, one-on-one partnership, to
Right.
having 5 partners, to having, people fresh out of college be a sub-advisor, to hiring experienced sub-advisors. So I believe that I could be helpful answering questions. If anybody's in, kind of at a crossroads of, should I hire somebody? And if so, how should I pay them?
Mm-hmm.
What about the non-competes? What should that job position look like? I learn as much as I teach during those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's just huge. Even to just reiterate, I'm excited about your knowledge in each stage. Like you said, like you might be here, which is huge, and kind of at like maybe the top of where you would want to be as far as owning your own practice that's got a lot of people, a lot of sports staff. And
And that
then,
was right for me, Candace, but
yeah,
that is not right for a lot of people.
right.
But I'm more than, each one of our sub advisors is kind of a business within a business also. So we can get into that more on later
Yeah.
episodes.
Well, okay, so let's go back to our timeline. So now we've gotten to where you were working for a practice, or you had started one.
Yeah, we started a practice, kind of decided to break out on our own. A handful of partners. It was basically just you shared the expenses, the rent, and that kind of thing. The common employees for receptionists and all that. And then that partnership fragmented, and a couple of us went one way and a couple went the other way, which was fine. We were all individual advisors as well. Then my cousin Mike, and co-founder at White Glove, also, he and our marketing was just really going great, even way before White Glove. And so we had to hire some more sub-advisors, and that's what kind of grew to where we are today. And that was probably year 15
Okay.
to year, where we are now, to about year 33.
Okay.
Just every couple of years, adding another advisor, another support staff, and just kind of getting bigger and bigger.
Okay.
Whether we wanted to or not, it just kind of takes over at some point.
Yeah. So then let's sneak in there to kind of dig in where along that like 15-year point did White Glove become born?
Sure. Yeah. White Glove happened in, I guess it would be year like 27 of my career. And Mike and I, we always did Social Security seminars. I mean, pretty much since day one of, well, I guess the first couple of years
After
into my
all the door
career.
knocking.
Yeah, which was horrible. Using the old Bresser's guide, going to the library, making Xerox copies. It was horrible.
Boy, I don't think I would have it in me.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, anybody listen to this podcast, they have a story like that where it's just an absolute grind and massive rejection, and it takes a certain personality to stick with it, because something like 80% of the people that get registered drop out of the business in the first 5 years, and it's something like 90% within 10 years. So there's a lot of people that spin out, and it's all because they don't have a full lobby or somebody to talk to on the other side of the desk. It's not because they don't know how financial planning works or whatever. So around year 27 or 28 in my career, we decided to try Facebook ads and social media to fill up a seminar. Where, as far as I know, and I believe this, Mike and I were the first financial advisors to use Facebook to populate a library or a community center to talk about financial planning subjects like Social Security and whatnot. Couldn't believe how great it went. And after a year or two of doing it ourselves, we're like, man, we got a lot of friends in the industry. I bet you, we could start a little marketing division, a side hustle, if you will.
Yeah.
And we never expected there to be such a big demand for what we were able to do. Change the business model where you only pay for people that show up and that kind of thing. And I think that was a real key differentiator between us and other seminar companies. But anyway, when White Glove went from 0 to 50 employees, then 100 employees within a few years, That's really when I started that team. None of my clients, suffered in their
Right, because you're in
service.
two places at once. You
Yeah.
now are, you're already busy as a
Yeah.
financial advisor and, running the show. And then now you're also having to run this other show, but keep it
Yeah.
going. So that's really interesting because I like that it kind of brings home of why you made that next jump to get all the support staff and to have and other advisors come in and, to pick up so you could almost make two dreams work.
Yeah, and I love both firms. I love our financial planning firm. That's really where my heart is totally. But our industry needs marketing, whether it's seminars or, radio shows or billboards or like you were talking about networking at the Rotary Club or something like that, or the
Yeah.
country club. That's what this is all about. I've always considered myself a very, very good financial advisor, but an amazing marketer. And you have to have people in your lobbies. So, and I made a lot of mistakes, by the way, and that's the fun stuff for people to hear about. I mean, the failures are embarrassing and
well, so let's jump into at least one of those. So,
oh Lord, okay.
I mean, so what was like you had to have had some pretty rough times in the beginning. I mean, obviously all the door knocking stuff and all that, like you said, everybody goes through it and not knocking it fully, some people still make a lot of business from mailers and, going door to door and putting their name in books and stuff. So I'm by no means, I don't think either of us say it's wrong, but it's someone else's cup of tea maybe. But where do you see kind of some of those major, like, oh man, what was I thinking?
I have 5 of them. I don't think we have time. I have 5 very embarrassing stories of my career. But since you're talking about the door knocking, I mean, one of them was, when I used to cold call, hey, this is Dean Thurman, new advisor in your area. If I come across something that you think you might be interested in, do you mind if I send you some information on that? Okay, yeah, go ahead. Okay, do you consider yourself an aggressive or conservative investor? I did that thousands of times, but you had to know who to call, right? So there's something called a Bresser's Guide, which is a reverse phone book back in the 90s, before the internet, where you'd go to I'd drive around, find a nice street looked like people had money in that street, and then go and look up that street in the library, make a copy of it, and it would actually have the person's name and phone number that lived at that address, right? So I'd call the 100 people that are on that street or whatever and give them that pitch I just did and try and send them some information and go through the process. Well,
so far it still sounds good. Where does it go downhill?
Yeah, well, because I after keep, hello, is Mr. Smith there? Is Mrs. Smith, whatever. Every time I asked for Mr. and Mrs. Addy, there was like, I'm sorry, you have the wrong number. And it got to be like, why is this family with the last name of ATTY, which I was pronouncing Addy, which made sense. There's got to be something with this family that they're incognito and they don't want. So it's like, after weeks and weeks of every once in a while calling Mr. and Mrs. Addy and hearing, I'm sorry, you have the wrong number. Finally, some lady said, you got that out of a Bresser's Guide, and Addy just stands for attorney. That means that we're attorneys and our last name is so-and-so. And your face right now was my face. And I'm so embarrassed. I couldn't make another call that day. And I'm just like, this whole time, I didn't realize that meant that person was an attorney.
Oh my gosh.
So that was just more personally humiliating, realizing just how dumb I was.
You never forget that now, huh?
No, I mean, that was 30 plus years ago. And then there's so many more stories with, oh my gosh, I got to tell you one more. I know we're running out of time, but I just got to tell you one. One of these cold calls, I end up at this lady's house. It was an apartment. I remember I was trying to recommend an IRA. She had $500. I was trying to put in an Oppenheimer fund. And it was at this little table, dining room table sort of. And she had like an 8-year-old son, great. But now there's peanut butter and jelly. There's the dog is there.
Lots
the phone
of distractions.
Is ringing. Yeah, all this is going on. And so to try and help me out, the lady, she gave her son a little bag of goldfish, those little crackers or whatever. And so he's eating them. And then, of course, they go all over. And then she stops and she says, hey, you need to vacuum. So next thing you know, he's vacuuming. I'm trying to pitch this $500 IRA.
You're like,
right?
She's not listening to
and
a word I'm saying.
Out of left field, wham! something just smashes me in the face. I'm sitting there. My lips are numb. My glasses. I was wearing glasses, and by the way, my glasses are real now. I don't know where they are. Of course, I mean everybody knows this, but my glasses were fake at the time to look older.
Oh
My
God.
sister's an optometrist, and my glasses were sitting on my face like this. My lips were throbbing, and the lady was like, so the 8-year-old, well, he was done vacuuming, so instead of walking over and pulling the cord out from the wall, he yanked it from like 5 feet away, and the cord just whipped around and went whap, right in there. Never got the sale. Then I remember dad
Oh my
calling.
God, I feel like she owed it to you.
Oh, I know. But this is so the dad calls, and she goes, I'm talking to someone, and she goes, is this a no load mutual fund? And I'm just like, so that was like an awful, embarrassing one. So I can see why 80-90% of the people, back out of this industry, and why I knew there had to be a better
way.
Yes. So we went seminars.
You almost became a babysitter almost, I think. Oh my God. Well, I know that we are close to our time here today, but I did want to ask one last thing. I know that it's something that we want to bring forward with us once we start having guests on, is to ask you if you know now, all that you've been through now, if you would have known back then, where or what would be something that you would change or maybe do differently that would have maybe sent you on a different trajectory, would have caused things to happen quicker, would have maybe put you in a whole different path? What comes to mind?
That's a great question. It's one of those, my answer will be like, I wouldn't change anything because it led me to where I am now, all the good and the bad and so on and so forth. But I would have told myself to have a different perspective. Don't be stressed out. Don't get so down on yourself. Grind it out. Don't quit. Keep going. With some of that stuff, I did have to tell myself. But also, I did try and quit the industry a couple of times, and I couldn't get a job somewhere else because the economy was so bad a couple of times. And thank goodness I didn't. I was selling
it just kept sucking you back.
It kept sucking me back, and I always wanted to do this. So just stick with it. Don't stress. Grind it out. Figure out a path to financially, keep it all together. Which when I started, even a year into it, I couldn't buy 2 boxes of cereal. My wife and I would be like, just 1 box. That's all we can afford. That Cavalier didn't have a muffler, couldn't fix that. So I wish I could tell myself back then everything's going to be okay. Just stick with it.
A really cool way to look at that is bringing it all the way back to the beginning is when you said, you saw this financial advisor walk in the room or a broker and you were like, that guy got it. He gets it,
Yeah.
and I want to be there one day, is to maybe, instead of looking the horse right in the mouth, accept the difficulty and the hardship and know that you're not alone. Like, you're not doing bad, but it's that where you want to get is not easy.
I love it. There is no better profession on the planet as far as I'm concerned. I can't imagine anything else. There's a lot of good other professions out there. You want to be a rock star, you want to be, a professional athlete. Yeah. Okay, great. But as far as a professional, you can, it's hard, but you can make your own schedule. You can be as big or as small as you want. You can be in total control of your time.
You just got to get there.
You got to get there, and it's really hard, but it's awesome. So if you're listening and you're going through a struggle right now, stick with it. If you have a particular question, please get it over to Candace or myself, Dean at whiteglove.com. Email it. We'll answer it at our next podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually going to open up a question form on the podcast tab on our website at whiteglove.com. So please feel free to throw any questions there. And again, if there's any other way you want to get it to us, you can always DM the White Glove accounts on any social media platform. We would love to hear from anyone. But with that, I think that concludes our very first episode. Dean, if you want to just kind of give the listeners just one last idea of what they can expect moving forward as far as kind of topics and what we'll be going over in the future as we kind of narrow down the FAST podcast strategy itself. in this new chapter.
Like I said, I just want to provide as much value as possible. I want to, share with you all the information, all the knowledge and perspectives and strategies that I've learned from other financial advisors of being part of White Glove and doing so many host universities and interacting with so many other advisors that do things a little bit differently. All of those best practices, I want to share them. Again, whether it's about being a solo or an ensemble, should you change broker dealers or not? What kind of phone systems do you use? I mean, it doesn't matter. It's like us as individual advisors, we don't have anybody usually to ask those questions to, or I'm having this issue, or should I segment my book, or what about communications or client appreciation events? Right. Where is the industry going? All those types of things. I'll do my best to either bring on an expert that could answer it better or answer it myself. So that's tip number one. And number two, ATTY is not a last name. It stands for attorney. So
there we go.
That's very much, Candace.
That's our tip for the day. I think that is the winner. All right. Well, thank you so much on behalf of myself and Dean for listening in to the Fast Podcast today. And we look forward to bringing you more episodes every other week from here on out.
First episode's in the books. Boom.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fast Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Have any questions or comments about the show? You can submit them on our website at whiteglove.com/fastpodcast. The views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of White Glove or InvestWise Financial. The content is provided for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as a substitute for professional investing advice. Once again, thank you for joining us on the Fast Podcast.